welcome. Today I am with the co-founder of Via Stoica, a company where they provide Stoic life coaching, workshops, motivational speaking engagements, corporate training, and courses. They do all of this based on the Stoic philosophy to help other people live better and more peaceful lives. The person that I am speaking with today is Benny Voncken. Okay. So we're going to talk about Stoicism, right?
Yeah.
Tell us what that is.
Well, Stoicism is an ancient philosophy. It dates back about almost 2,500 years from ancient Greece, where it was started by a guy called Zeno of Citium. And he studied first with the Cynics and with the academics, the skeptics at that point, the Megarians. So he kind of mixed and matched a lot of philosophies, and then he came up with his own. And he wanted to bring it back to the basics and also to the people, as Socrates used to, teach his philosophy on the square in Athens. He would go to a stoa poikile, which was a covered archway where people used to walk and just bath. And he would just walk up and down and talk about his philosophy. And the core elements about Stoicism are to live with the virtues, which is wisdom, justice, courage, and temperance, and to live in accordance with your nature, to really find out who you are and the nature around you. So it is really a philosophy focused on the individual, on yourself, but also on the society around you. The ancient philosophers were really one of the first ones to say, like, we're cosmopolitans, like we are part of the world, we are part of society. But in order to help the society around us, we need to be that best cog in the wheel, if you will, to help the people around us. That's where it started, and we still read about these texts and about these teachings now.
When I think about Stoicism, I think about somebody being able to hang in there. Is that any part of it, or did I just attach the wrong meaning to it totally?
No, and this is one of the thing, and this is why one of the reasons why I like to go on podcasts to really show what Stoicism really is about. Because there's a lot of, and especially in the manosphere and the masculinity sectors, there's a lot of wrong message about Stoicism, and maybe the outward result would seem the same. Like if you practice Stoicism the right way, you would have a very balanced center. So you would be able to deal with a lot of adversity, but also with the good things in the right way. So it would show outwardly that you're calm, collected, and balanced. But when you look at the other message, that would be like you have to do it with brute force, that stiff upper lip, just go through it. But there's no long lasting benefits from that, because at one point you're going to meet yourself. At one point you're going to see that all the things that you've been pushing away, they will come bottling up. So with Stoicism, I would like to, usually I look at it from like like a Western version of Buddhism, Taoism, where you live in the moment, you live in the present, and you really try to find out who you are. So if you have anxieties or if you're angry at certain things, you really try to go at the core of why that is happening, what is triggering. And then before you act on those emotions, you examine the situation, you examine the event, and then you decide what the best course of action is. And usually it's not acting out of anger, or usually it's not acting out of those emotions that you're feeling. And then there's another part of it is where they say those emotions and those feelings, they're based on your thoughts and your beliefs, on what you see, how you perceive the world around you. And
Your
again, this is,
values,
yeah,
right?
your values, your principles, but also your ability to look at the world around you as the facts, to gather as much of information. And that's something that I feel is missing more and more, where people just act out of the first thing they hear and conceive that as the truth, instead of doing some research and examining and maybe finding out that what they thought isn't true. For example, if you have an interaction with someone else and you believe that they said something to you out of malice, well, they might have just misspoken or might have just been in a wrong, not in a really good place of themselves. Instead of asking, "Hey, are you okay? What's going on? Why did you say that to me?" You would just act out of that instinct, like, "Oh, someone did me wrong, so now I've got to do something back the same way. I've got to take revenge." And the Stoics would say, no. First of all, the best revenge is not to be that way. That's what Marcus Aurelius said in his meditations to himself. Those were his personal notes. And the second is like treat them with kindness, with compassion, and see where, what's going on. And that's the basics. Because even Socrates said, like, no one does wrong willingly. Everybody does the best thing for their own benefits. They just don't know what the right thing is. And if we believe that, there is some better way to do it, show them, set the right example, or ask them, hey, what's going on? And that's something that's missing. People jump to conclusions so quickly and so fast, and usually it's the wrong ones, and then they attach the wrong actions to that, and things happen as we see in the world around us as well.
A lot of people just don't know better, do they?
No,
And
exactly.
yeah,
And
yeah.
they don't want to know better. That's
I
another
don't
part.
want to know better.
Because it's easy. No, because it's easy. Like, oh, this is what I know, So let's just leave it at that. But if you really do the work, that's tough. That's really, because especially it, when you do the real work, you place a mirror in front of yourself, and it's not always pretty what you see in the mirror. Like, I've had the same thing. When you look and you ask yourself those questions, you're gonna find some answers that you might not like, and
Yeah.
that you have to take, ownership of the problems that you have in life.
Let's go backwards a little bit. Tell us about your background and how you got involved with this.
So my story is a little bit, mixed with a lot of things. Like, I studied tourism, but I moved to Spain to teach English. I'm from the Netherlands originally. I am currently at my parents' place, which is great to spend this time with them. This is a fortunate thing for me. Not everybody has that chance, so I'm really appreciative of that. But I moved to Spain to teach English, and then I moved to Dubai to do the same and work in education. And at that time, I was married, but along the way, the marriage went downhill, and we separated. We got divorced. I had some physical injuries and some obstacles. And usually, when you ask people, how did you get into Stoicism or self-improvement or growth, there's this story of like, oh, these things happen to me, right? No one really starts improving themselves when they're winning or when they feel like they're on the top of the hill. But so that's where I felt like I needed some guidance. I needed something to help me, and I stumbled across some Stoic books. Well, a friend of mine, he introduced me to science fiction and more of the reading books, and then we talked about philosophy, and I diagnosed myself with an existential crisis. It's like something is off here. So I started reading on these books, and I felt like I need to find some guidance. And I found the Stoics, and they really spoke to me. And as I say, as I always say, like, I'm not here to turn people into Stoics, but I would like to have more people to find their own philosophy of life, to really start thinking about it, to start making their own message, and like you said, your own values, your own principles, just your guiding basics and foundation. And for me, I found that in the Stoics, and the more and more I talk about it and meet people, the more I see that more people resonate with that message of, finding that peace within, doing the right things, making sure that your values and principles are aligned with who you are, and just acting out of that. And that's where I really started to read about it. I started to write a blog, and I started to, at one point started to coach people as well. So I use my Stoicism and my own experiences to help other people find that balance and find themselves in that, the difficult journey that life is. At the end of the day, it's not an easy ride.
Yeah, no, it's not. We have a lot of programs that work with lining values up with goals.
Mm.
And, I'm sure that you work with that a lot. So what do? Do you have a list of values and they pick out their values, or do people usually come to you and they're pretty clear on what their values are?
Well, and first of all, it's not for me to set their values, right?
Right.
For me, it's like to help them find theirs.
Hmm.
And Stoicism does give you like a set of guiding principles, if you will, like the virtues, the wisdom, justice, temperance, and courage. Those are the four pillars, the four cardinal virtues, and they really
Can you say
encompass,
those one more time?
yeah,
Wisdom, justice,
temperance and
temperance,
courage.
and courage. Okay, go
So
ahead.
wisdom is like to gather more knowledge, to make sure that you know the information that you have, and use that in the right way to act. And justice is not really like what we see as justice, but justice is making sure that, everybody, you're kind, and everybody gets the best thing. So it's all divided. It's kind of a sense of care for yourself and the care of others. And then the temperance is moderation. Like, we don't have to go in excess either way. If we live moderate, and if we live in the right way that we need to do, then we'll have a good way. And as we said, life is difficult, so we do need courage to make those difficult decisions and to act when it's needed. And those are some of the principles that it's easy for me as a coach to use, because whenever I'm working with someone, you have those in the background and asking myself, okay, is this the best for this person? Why are they saying this? What is happening around them? So you have a nice little focused area to look at and ask questions from, and also to give them that guidance. For example, there are some key elements with Stoicism, like the dichotomy of control, to really focus on what's in your control and what's out and what's not in your control. That really helps. The acceptance, amor fati, as they say, accept your fate. Sometimes it's not easy, but they say, well, everything around you happens, which is outside of your control. It happens. It doesn't happen to you, but it happens around you. And you can accept it and then make the best out of it and choose the right action. And there's some more, like, for example, memento mori, how to deal with death and loss and letting go. And those are the kind of tools that we can use and help our clients to improve their lives incrementally, step by step, as we go along.
Can you be stoic if you don't have temperance or if you're not particularly wise?
Yeah, and then this is the good thing about this. It's not a we're not going to get it's not a focused on the end goal. We are working towards an ideal. That's what the Stoic used to say. They have this sage-like figure, and they used to look at Socrates as someone who was more kind of encapsulating that role and that figure and having those values. For example, like in Christianity, you would look at Jesus, or that's where we want to work towards. But we have flaws, right? We are not perfect, but we can do our best. And that's what the Stoics say. We can just try our best and make sure that we make progress every step of the way. And as you said, like I struggle with temperance. Like that's one of my main key focuses on like I'm not calling myself wise, I'm still working on that as well and just, but for example, with drinking, with food and drinking, like I quit drinking alcohol 4 years ago completely because I felt like I can't control it. Once I start, it's just, line them up and I'll go. So I figured that's not good for me.
Yeah.
So I feel like, yeah, as you said, a lot of people struggle with moderation nowadays, right? So those are the things that we can work on, and it's a progress. It's just making progress one step at a time, one day by day, and yeah, that's a way to work
You
at it.
you brought up a good point. You talked about Jesus for Christians, Jesus, you look at Jesus and that gives you something to work towards or a someone to emulate. In Stoicism, are there people to emulate or to look up to? And
Yeah,
I don't mean to compare it as a religion. I just mean to compare it as having a figurehead or maybe not one figurehead, but maybe having many people that you can follow.
yeah, no, and that's a really good point. That's pretty much the shining light that they work towards. And as I said, they used to kind of look at Socrates as that kind of wise person because he was always looking for the truth and always examining life. But then they have at Zeno and even the Stoics themselves, they would say like I'm not a sage, like I'm not even close. I'm still working on myself. But they would describe that sage person in their text. They would look at what would this sage do, and for example, the sage would have all information. The sage would know exactly what's going on and would accept it, would have that radical acceptance. Like, this is what's going on. It's not good or bad. It's not happening. I'm not the victim here. It's just happening. Let me just look at it objectively and then act rationally and using logic. So that's that figure that they created. And they know it's kind of this maybe a mythical figure or at least this ungraspable ideal, but they say, let's work towards it. Let's try to get as close as we can. So yeah, it is good to have that example. And they also show us that we all have like examples in our lives. Like we have people around us that we can say they're doing this right, at least according to my opinion. I would like to move more towards them. And if we do that, then we can become the examples to people who are a little bit behind us. So that is that chain that we can all kind of help each other thrive and live a little bit better.
And aspire to.
Yeah, yeah. And that's the key, right? Just to have that motivation and that drive to say, I want to be better.
Mhm.
And that's something that we can do just one day at a time.
How do you coach stoicism? Do you have a program that you follow or what do you do?
Yeah, that's a kind of a two-way, maybe more way or more path or options, because some people aren't necessarily really keen on learning more about Stoicism, the history. So then I, as a coach, use that information and my experience to ask and try to be as objective as possible when asking the questions. And I kind of use the tools, maybe not labeling as much as you would with people who are more interested in Stoicism. Then you would go a little bit deeper and have them practice those things and give them really clear exercises to do. So there is this, it kind of depends on who approaches us and how much of this, the philosophy itself they want to use, because we can give them the books to read, the tools, and even like give them courses in what Stoicism is and how to apply it, and even give them practices. For example, if you're dealing with moderation, okay, try to take it one step at a time. Try to ask yourself, did I have enough? What is my enough? Do I need to have this access? Why am I doing these things? Or with preferred indifferences, which is all the externals that we have around. They're not good or bad. We just assign them a label. But if I have it now, let me use it. Let me show gratitude to have it now. And if it's gone, I'll let it go, because that's how it works in the world. So we do have different programs. It kind of depends on how much someone wants to know about Stoicism. But as a coach, we do use it in our coaching, whether it's a little bit more covert, if you will, or a little bit more um, on the surface.
Mm-hmm. But what does it mean to have a good life?
Yeah, that is the big question, right? That is the question we all want to know. And the Stoics, they have a word for it, and they call it eudaimonia, which is that happy life. But that could be translated to having a calm life, being at peace. And that means,
That be lovely.
yeah, exactly, right. That's why it's that idea, right? Where you say, I'm at peace. And they say that the real Stoic could even be happy on the rack when being tortured, where they would say, and this is obviously an extreme, where they say like, even if you're tortured, you could still be a good person.
You
So
find a
even if,
way to be happy where you are, right?
yeah, and then happiness comes from knowing that you're doing the right thing or doing the best to do the right thing. So you could say, I'm not gonna judge these people who are doing these things to me because they are doing it because of their nature. They're just doing what they need to do, and I need to do here and just endure this pain or this experience. But it also is applied to the good things in life, where we have to experience them and really be aware in the moment, because that is a key thing of Stoicism, where it's you're living in the present. So, and that helps when you are, for example, dealing with anxiety. The Seneca says we suffer more in imagination than we do in reality. And if we can really focus on living in the present, then all those worries about the future, all those other things, we can kind of, you know, quench them a little bit. We can really focus on where we are again.
So can people really learn this and be able to get past some of the misery that they feel that they don't necessarily have to feel from certain circumstances? Can they learn this with coaching?
Yeah, yeah, and I've experienced it. Like I had a conversation the other day, and I had this really nice epiphany that I have reduced my anxiety personally to from such a high level to so low, because when I feel those moments of anxiety, of worry, I ask myself, okay, what can I do about it right now? What
Mhm.
is the action that I can take? If nothing, then let me focus on what I can do. So we can train ourselves to, because these are all thoughts, right? At the end of the day, it's not really a popular decision, but and it doesn't count for all the cases. But in a lot of the times, it is a choice to be either happy or to be miserable or to be anxious. And we can make that choice to say, okay, I am feeling worried. Let me see what I'm going to do. We can take a pause, just calm down a little bit, see what's happening, and then we can make that choice. Okay, this is something, I'm putting this label on it. This is my opinion. This is my judgment. Let me see what's really going on. And the interesting thing is the cognitive behavioral therapy, like modern day therapy, is directly related from Stoicism. They use Stoicism to build out their techniques to say, okay, these are your thoughts. Your thoughts, they influence your behavior and they influence your feelings. So let me look at that. Why are you thinking this way? So
I can
it
see
can
a
be
lot of
taught.
emotional intelligence work that ties back to that.
Oh, yeah, yeah, definitely. Because that's where it all starts, right? They say that these are the impulses. Something happens, we get an impulse, and from that impulse we have our emotions and our feelings. And that's something you can't do much about, right? But we can give them a little bit of a, we can break them, we can stop them and say, okay, what's going on? And as we practice that pause and as we practice that reflection, that does diminish because we start to look at the triggers differently.
Yeah. I always wondered the difference because there's certain things, I don't know if I've had a high tolerance for pain or, things that happen. And I'm sure that there's some things that I let squash me, but then I see younger people that have the same things happen and where, you know, we've dealt with it and moved on, and probably not spend a whole lot of time sitting in it. There's some people that sit in it
Mm.
a lot. I mean, they just sit there and they won't move out of it. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, and that's the choice we make, right? Like
Yeah.
and even for me, and I think I was just in that generation where it was still okay, just just buckle up and just keep on going and keep doing, and especially in our family, we don't really talk a lot about these things, so it is something new to really examine and really look at what's going on and why am I feeling these things. But that's also where moderation comes in play, right? Because we can go to rumination, we can go to overthinking and staying stuck there, but that's also a choice in a lot of cases because it's kind of a safe feeling where you say, "Oh, look at me, I'm sad," like give me attention, and I don't want to do the real work. I don't want to take on that
Oh,
responsibility
but it's
of
a
improving.
miserable place for them to be.
Oh yeah, and the Stoics would say that it's actually a really good place to be. They would
Really?
actually, yeah, because they would say that the obstacle is the way. And Seneca has a quote. He says, "You are unfortunate because you have never been unfortunate. You have never had the opportunity to show yourself and the world what you're capable of." So they would, and when you start to think about those miserable places from an aspect or mindset of, I can learn from this, I can grow from it starts to already take some of that power away from it. It starts to turn it into something better. You can look at, okay, this is now my moment to shine, to really grow, and to learn from it. And then you already take the sting out of it a little bit. So they
Right.
actually say, use those things. And again, we put that label of good or bad onto something. Like the example that I look at, and it happened to me, like if you go to an interview, job interview, you don't get the job, you
Mhm.
feel horrible, you feel let down, you feel your confidence is down, and then maybe a week later you find an even better job. So the thing that you thought about was bad before turns out to be something good that you didn't get the
Right.
job because now you have a better
Always.
opportunity.
Yeah. We're just not smart enough to know it 2 weeks ago.
Exactly. Or we are too fast to say this is bad.
That's
Well, if
right.
we just slow down a little bit and say, I don't know, maybe it's good.
Right. So, where do you start with the creation of a philosophy for life?
That's a really interesting question. And the core starts with yourself. And sometimes Stoicism, in this case, we're talking about Stoicism, but sometimes it gets the label of being selfish, where you just think about yourself. But at the end of the day, that's where you've got to start. Because I can't, like the airlines have it correct, put your own oxygen mask on first before you help someone else, because you can't. So we have to really start looking at ourselves. And really, like for me, my compass is just my inner voice, that intuition that I have. Does it feel good? And then if it feels good, that means that I feel calm about it, that my conscience is clear, that I know that I'm doing the best I can, and I just feel at peace. It's not going to be like a peace where I don't feel like I have to do things or feel like I'm busy or that it's going to be difficult, but at least I feel like this is what I should be doing. And
Right.
then we can ask ourselves those questions. But it really starts from ourselves. And it helps to read and to look around and to look at other people, how they live, and just get the voices of seeing what kind of speaks to you. And there's so many out there. And a lot of them, if you really look at it, a lot of them say almost the same. It's just the nuance differences, what kind of word works for you. But it all starts with you and that self-examination. And from there you can build your principles, your values, but also your tools, your mechanisms, and just the things to fall back on.
That's like having a business plan for your life, right?
Yeah, yeah, and for me, that's one of the ways that it started. I was working in Dubai and I was driving home one day. It's like, when you're working in education, you always have like set holidays. And this was when we were going through the pandemic. My parents are getting older, and I felt like I didn't want to be stuck in one country. So I decided to think about life kind of slogan or motto or elevator pitch. And I said, I don't want to have to work. I want my freedom of time and place to be able to pursue my passion, help as many people as I can. And this sounds like a dream, right? A lot of people would have that, but that's something that I'm working towards. And it helps me make my decisions. Like it helps me decide, okay, why am I doing this? Because I want to work towards this. Let me see how I can best manage that and how I can do that in the best way possible.
It's a lot easier to make decisions when you have a plan. What practices of Stoicism can help the people that are the people who are listening with their everyday life?
For me, the first thing would be that acceptance. That they say amor fati, just accept what's happening. They use this analogy of a dog tied to a cart. Like they're very into deterministic, so everything is cause and effect. But we do have that agency of accepting it or not. So the little dog is tied to a cart. He has two choices: either to walk away, to walk along with the cart, or to be dragged by it. And that's kind of what life is happening. We can either resist against everything or look at it, okay, I'm just accepting what's happening and making the best out of it and trying not to get into that victim mentality. And another part is to really take responsibility of your own life. And that's something that I feel that a lot of people are just trying to give away and point fingers to others. Like, my life is bad because of these things happening, because of this job, because of that person, instead of looking at what they can do to make it better and take that response. At least that was a really impactful epiphany, if you will, for me when I realized, like, I don't take responsibility for my life. I always wait for something to happen. I always wait for someone else to do something. Let me take charge and let me move towards the life that I wanna live. And then there's others, memento mori, remember that you will die. So it sounds morbid, but it's all about being grateful in the moment. Being happy, being here, being aware of what you are doing, and just setting that feeling of gratitude, because
Yeah,
that's
don't
something
take
that
the time
people
for granted.
exactly. And time is another thing. The Stoics say all the time that we have right now, we're not going to get it back, and we don't even know how much we have. It's a most important asset that we have, but yet we give it away so freely. While we keep on clinging on money and possessions, those are feel more important. While time is the real asset that we should really focus on.
How do you apply Stoicism and how has it changed you? And I know we talked about that a little bit, but
And I can give a concrete example with that. One of the first ones where I noticed that it really could help was when I was dealing with a coworker in one of the schools that I was working at, and he was always playing these tricks and really getting under my skin and trying to frustrate me with these games that he was playing. And then I read Marcus Aurelius, and he said that person is bound to be like that. It's like getting angry at a fig tree for secreting juice. And then I went back to the school the next day and was like, Marcus Aurelius was right. He is doing that. This is his behavior. I can get angry at him being who he is, or I can try to find a better way to deal with it. And once you start to see that people are just acting the way they are, and they're not willing to change, then I can try to change my action towards it. So that was one of the ways that I really saw, like, there's a lot of practical application. For example, when I set out to drive, and now I don't have to do it as much because I guess I practiced it enough. But usually when I went to drive, it's like, okay, today I'm going to meet with the people who drive slow, the people who cut in line, the people who do all these crazy things. Let me just not get angry. My job is to stay calm, stay safe, and just drive, get from point A to B, and whatever they are doing, let me just let them do their stuff, and I will do my thing, is to drive as safely and as best as I can. And it really helped me. I wasn't really, I've never been this person full of rage, but I used to get frustrated with people when driving. And now I'm just like, okay, they're doing their thing. I know that these people, I'm going to encounter them. When I do, let me just laugh at it. It's like, oh, there's this person, and let me just drive and keep going.
my granddaughter's going to resonate with that. She came down here to visit.
Oh,
She
nice.
had such road rage. I told her if she was going to be in my car, she had to sit on it. And she's over it now, but that's kind of dangerous, isn't it?
It is, but it applies to so many things. Even if you go to the groceries, you go to the store, there's people, standing in front of in an aisle, standing in front of an item that you want to get. Well, they're just probably figuring out what to buy. So give them some space, go find something else, or just wait a little bit. And that's the parts of life where it really touches the practical side of it.
Right. Either that or they might be an old person that forgot which way they're supposed to turn.
Exactly.
Well, it gives you a lot of responsibility, but it gives you some power too when you take what you can do and leave with them the responsibility of what they do, right?
Yeah, and not assume the worst. I think that that's something that a lot of people do. They immediately go and catastrophize the situation. They say,
Most
"Oh,
people are
some
good.
yeah, exactly." Or they're doing things just because they, as you said, they might be
They don't
confused
know
or they
better.
might not know where they go, what they're doing.
Right. So what are the most common misconceptions about Stoicism?
Oh, and there's a lot, there's a lot about that, especially when we look at men, right? But when we um, just in general, whenever I hear the word stoic mentioned, or like the Olympics were on, and I think I had like a list of like how many times they used it. Oh, this person is being so stoic, and that means that people do not show emotions, right? But the Stoics really want to focus on the positive emotions.
Mhm.
Just enjoy life. Life is beautiful, and they really want to experience that joy of life. But then they also recognize the bad emotions like anger and grief up to a certain point, right? They say that grief is fine, but it needs to be in moderation as well. But anger and all these things, there's not a lot of good things that come out of anger. So, but focus on the right positive emotions and really work on what it means to you inside of you. And then you have the broicism, the masculinity sphere, where it just just toughen up and that stiff upper lip and just crush through all the problems and forget about them. And that's really not what it's about because they are stepping over that key principle, that key step of examining yourself and doing the proper inner work instead of just like pushing through. And I think it is kind of dangerous for a lot of young men out there who are being taught to just keep going and forget about all the feelings that they have and why things trigger them because they're not really going to solve the issues at hand. And they're just going to create a lot of more aggressive men because that's the way they see online and on social media that this is how you should behave as a man, and it's not the way.
Um, okay, so you have a website, viastoica.com, and we're going to put that underneath the show notes so anybody can get a hold of you if they want to. And do you have lots of information on your website about Stoicism?
Yeah, we've been writing a blog for over 2 years now, and we have a lot of book reviews. We've got some list of books that people want to read up
Oh,
there.
good. I like
Yeah,
to.
yeah.
I'll go visit your book reviews.
Oh, definitely. No, there's some really good, interesting books out there. I just read one on Stoic ethics, which is a little bit too academic. Well, not too academic. It's like academic and practical, but how to think like a Roman emperor is a really nice one, and then how to be a Stoic. A lot of practical tips. And the guide to the good life, as you asked, like what is the good life? The guide to the good life is a really interesting one. So we do have the book list there, and a lot of like information about the early Stoics. A lot of quotes we have like over 200 quotes by Epictetus, Seneca, Marcus Aurelius on there. So,
Great.
and also about the coaching and everything that we do. So everything is, if you want to find something, then it's up there.
Yeah, very good. All right. Well, thank you so much for being here. I enjoyed talking. I didn't know how much I was going to love talking about Stoicism, but this has been a really nice conversation, and I think that everybody will enjoy listening to it, and I think that everybody will take away something valuable from it. So I
Thanks.
appreciate you being here with me today. It's
And I
been
and I
nice.
get that more often where people say, I'm not sure about this stoicism thing.
Yeah, we'll
Yeah, I get that
see.
more often. Yeah, and then people, but then I'm like that's why I feel like it's important to show the other side. It's a really philosophy of life for life as well.
Right. Very good.
Yeah.
Well, thank you. Enjoy the time with your folks.
Thank you. And you enjoyed the time with your granddaughter, right? Your daughter.
Yes. Yes. So she's coming to visit in 2 weeks.
Oh, nice. Okay,
Yeah.
well, good luck.
Thank you.